Service. All right. Are we live? YouTube, welcome to Clear Vision Wednesday. I only put these glasses on because today we are talking about presbyopia. Presbyopia, the old age side, like you lose your near vision. So that's why I have these reading glasses on. I don't actually use reading glasses. Before we begin, please subscribe to this channel. My name is Claudia Mühlenweg. I'm the founder of the Natural Clear Vision Institute, and I go live here every single week, either me or with a guest, and we talk about all things vision and how you can improve your vision. And this is a very mild one that I have on. It's a half a diopter, very mild. You can't even get this in the drugstore. The drugstore ones usually start at +1. And here we go, like this kind of thing, right? And see how it's a magnifying glass, how you can see my face looks bigger behind, my eyes look bigger behind the glasses. So what happens? Why do we get this thing called presbyopia, known as old age sight? In other words, people call it the arms are too short because we have to, they hold everything far away. I have to put those reading glasses on. Before we begin, I really want to say that you're not going to ruin your eyes more by drugstore reading glasses or dollar store reading glasses versus fancy, expensive optometrist reading glasses. But reading glasses will destroy your vision. And that's why it's so important to listen up today. Because I see that with family members, with friends, they start with a +1, +1.5, +2, +2.5. All of a sudden, they can't read the eye chart in the distance anymore. And they were always part of the distance vision. So what do we know? I researched this a little bit because my dear friend and optometrist, Dr. Mark Grossman, Natural Eye Care, wrote a big book, and everything is looked up in scientific studies. So I don't want to tell you all the studies that were related to this, but let's talk a little bit about the physical and the emotional connections about presbyopia, which usually affects people anywhere from like 40s to 50s, some people 60s, and some people never get it, which is also interesting. So when we look at the pure physical aspects, let's start there. This is my little eyeball here. So the area that, oops, my cornea is falling out of my eyeball. The part that is affected, at least that's what we hear, is mostly the lens. So the eyeball is normally round, a healthy eyeball is round. And when you're nearsighted, your eyeball is a little bit elongated, so it looks more like this. When you are really farsighted from birth, on which I was, then the eyeball is a little bit too short. Like it's almost like, more like an upright oval, extremely sad. Now, presbyopia can affect people that are nearsighted or farsighted. So in any case, that's why we call it old age sight. And they believe it's mostly related to this part of the eye. That's the inner or the crystalline lens. When you have a cataract, it gets cloudy, but this is the lens in the eye. And now let's break it down to all the different pieces. So the lens, just like the cornea, has no blood vessels. So it's kind of a closed microcirculation system. And otherwise it wouldn't be clear, right? If it would be blood vessels, we would see through like brown, reddish filter. And that's believed that the ions in the circulation, in the system, create a flow of water nourishing the lens and also from the back of the eye, the cornea, with crucial nutrients. And this extracellular flow moves the nutrients into the lens, and the intracellular flow of water moves the waste out. So it's kind of like, instead of blood vessels or blood veins and arteries, it's basically it's a cellular system that is based on water and the flow of water. And as we age, it's basically believed that this water movement within the lens slows down, which accumulates proteins and fats in the lens and also leads to glycation, which is basically bonding. The proteins are bonding with sugars, and that increases, that glycation increases, and the levels of the master antioxidant glutathione as well as vitamin C levels can decrease. Now, many of us are supplementing with glutathione and vitamin C, and that's a really helpful thing to also help with prevention of cataracts. But also what I researched, mostly via Mark Grossman's book, is that basically the lens develops a kind of barrier which makes transportation and absorption of glutathione to the inner lens more difficult, and therefore lowers this important antioxidant in the lens, making the inner lens, so the inner part of the lens, less flexible, right? That's what we usually hear from our eye doctors. We get stiffer lenses, and that's why all the things fall apart. Now, why do some people not get presbyopia? I've known 90-year-olds and 100-year-olds that can read small print, no problem. that didn't have presbyopia. So the other piece of the puzzle is, we don't see that in my little eye model, but the lens basically gets flatter when we look in the distance, and it gets bulgy. Like, think of your biceps, like this is near point, and then when you look in the distance, it's relaxed. And there's a ciliary muscle around the lens. And we believe, again, this is like, I don't have the hard science to prove this, but there's a belief that the ciliary muscle loses some of its strength, which makes it harder to flex the lens. And again, the flexing the lens, meaning when we look up close, the lens has to thicken. Think of a magnifying glass versus when we look in the distance, it's relaxed. So there is a belief that the ciliary muscle loses some power, and that's what one of the exercises we will talk about today is, obviously engaging that muscle, because like everything else, when we don't use them, the muscles can atrophy. So that's one important piece. The other thing is that the increase of those proteins and the lipids in the lens can basically create less flexibility, making it harder to look up close. Now, again, why do some people not get this? So there's many factors: living a healthy lifestyle, eating a clean diet, drinking healthy amounts of structured water, preventing EMFs, all the things we already know about. We're not going to get into that today, because that will actually help you keep your eyes in top shape, including your ability to look up close, right? But also emotional states. So let's quickly look at emotional states, basically, because that's another factor. Why do people get presbyopia in their 40s, 50s, 60s, right? When we look into this emotional thing, a lot of times it's that kind of midlife. We might lose our jobs, we might shift careers, we might retire. So there's a lot of that like life changing happening too. And not everybody is happy about those things. So a common trigger could be feeling disconnected from younger generations. You're like, I can't catch up with all this technology. I'm like a boomer, you know. There's a sense of lost opportunities or unresolved past emotions. So let's quickly look into those emotions. There's a connection. We know there's a connection from the eyes to the liver, generally speaking, in Chinese medicine, right? But the liver is a connection to anger, frustration, hate, which is also known in Chinese medicine as the wood element. So I found in my work, and I'm also, I have struggled with farsightedness my whole life, that we have as farsighted people, and that goes for presbyopia too, to a certain degree, there is more frustration and anger than with nearsighted people. There's more fear and anxiety, generally speaking. But there's this sense of anger. There's like a sense of living too much in the past, the good old days. Everything was better back then when I was young, and right. So there's this general feeling of that. There is so basically you always live in the past. The other piece is that you are more focused on the outer world and people around you. I see that with many family members, right? They talk about all the stuff the neighbors do, but there's less of an ability to look at yourself, because you're always pushing out, out, out. You're always living in that outer world, like criticizing everybody else, what they're doing, who can relate to those things, right? So that there's also the positive way, like I see that being a mother, right? We always give everything to the children, and often we lack the ability to self-care, really nourish ourselves. So something like journaling might be helpful. There's also the idea of some guilt. Maybe you have some guilt about things you did in the past, that you said or did in the past. And there's a lack of interest in the present moment, in this kind of idea, the here and now, and the future as well. So there's this, like, again, we're living in the past, the memories, all the good things. Sometimes there's a sense of lost joy. Like that also connects with cataracts, which is, again, affecting the lens, right? Both presbyopia and cataracts affect the lens in the eye. And there's a sense of lost joy. There's really no dream for the future. Louise Hay said, like, seeing a dark future, like, now what? I'm useless. My kids are grown. I'm kind of like, I'm too stupid to deal with technology. And the other piece is keeping everybody at a distance. There's always a sense of like, we don't want things to get too close to us, both emotionally, but also physically, because presbyopia is kind of this problem of looking things close up. We don't want to deal with the details. I see a lot of high-performing people, business owners, entrepreneurs. Of course, we have to start delegating. I do that too, right? I don't want to deal with all the minutiae anymore. But there's also a sense when we talk about dealing with minutia and details, there's also a sense like not wanting to look at the little things and just delegating everything out and never really dealing with those things. So that's kind of the broad brushstrokes about the emotional, physical aspects. And lastly, I want to say in societies, and my friend and colleague Trisha Kirby and I did a whole episode on emotions. And we found that in societies like older tribes or where the elder woman or the shamans or the wise man or the wise woman, where like basically old people are respected and revered and valuable, there's less levels of presbyopia because again, because they feel like not like this old person that has to be pushed into a nursing home because they feel they're actually respected by everybody else. And seeing yourself as relevant and important to the society at large, to the community. When we look at the blue zones people, a lot of them didn't wear glasses, no presbyopia, but they're all in this community. And they live often in multi-generational households, kind of the old ways of doing things. And maybe that was better. I don't know. Now we kind of live more on our own. So on the emotional level, I would say this is not about the 5 exercises, but also think about the emotional level. Connect with who you really are. I always find it helpful when I get these big questions, what brings me joy? I every time I go into the garden or I plant veggies or I cook something, like those are things that bring me joy. Maybe you are the person who loves to knit or who loves to do beach walks, but look in your everyday, look into things where you're like, oh, I'm so excited to do this. I really enjoy this. Versus like the things you're like, I don't really like doing that. But focus on those things that you love doing, because that will give you some clues as to how you can, on the emotional level, how you can connect with that true you. So let's talk about the 5 exercises. And you guys know if you follow me, and make sure you subscribe. If you follow me, you know that I'm not a fan of exercises because eye exercises don't really teach us how to use our eyes well. And I do that for marketing. Everybody looks for marketing, like for exercises. Now, you could basically say some of these things are exercises, but let's start with number 1. And this is not one thing where you can pick something, but come back. What were things at the near point? Because again, presbyopia, you don't want to, like, small print is blurry. You don't want to deal with the details. Writing your name on a piece of rice sounds like the most daunting thing ever. What are things you used to do as a child or even as a young adult that brought you joy, that are something at the near point? So things that I usually give my clients, and again, you can pick whatever you want, but doing things up close, ideally black and white things are most helpful because that's what reading would be about. But remember these books, connect the dots, those things where you have to look at the different numbers and you basically know what this is. This is a book I bought, one of those, you know, like discount stores, but those connect the dots, because what it does, it's something that you used to do as a kid. It's not challenging. You want to do something that is not about performance. It's not about how many quick things can you do in 1 minute, but enjoying connecting with the blur. Let things be a little blurry, finding the numbers, and then slowly blink and breathe. And as you know it, things will clear up, because this is not about being perfect. Another thing, and you might always, if you have high levels of presbyopia, you can maybe use a photocopy, or they have these in large print. But these kind of letter grids, where you're supposed to find words in there. This is a book I bought at Barnes and Nobles many years ago on a cheap discount table. But they give you the words, and what this does, you're moving your eyes around a lot. So you're moving around your eyes and you're finding these words. So maybe for you it's other things. Maybe it's certain arts and crafts. Maybe it's coloring. I have coloring books in my shelf. Maybe you love coloring books. If you want to do coloring, then remember, you want to do something that is based on your vision abilities. Some of the adult coloring books are so detailed and fine. And if you're wearing a +3, +4, you already have pretty poor near vision, then get one of those books that are for children that have, like, I have a book with mandalas that is beautiful. Do something that is not like super intricate where it's kind of too frustrating. So you want to match your near vision activity, the level of the print, the letters, the connect the dots, whatever it is, to your ability to do it without glasses and not get frustrated. So could also be reading childhood. Maybe you have some books from when you were a child And you have those books, and for reading beginners, maybe, the large print, Dr. Seuss, those kind of books. Do something at the near point where it's actually fun. It's not about being productive or, being a speed reader or those things. So that's my number one, quote unquote, exercises, doing things at the near point, because we need to remember we lose that muscle ability if we never look up close. If you always put those magnifying glasses on, you will not exercise your ciliary muscle. And one more thing, when we look up close, our two eyeballs have to so-called, okay, I'm trying to hold them straight, have to converge. In other words, when we look up close, they have to roll in toward each other, meaning the medial recti muscle, one of the outer eye muscles, has to tighten, and the lateral one, the outer one, has to stretch a little bit. So in addition to the ciliary muscle working the lens. Okay. The second one that goes hand in hand, what we just talked about with convergence, is convergence exercises. So one of my mentors is the former behavioral optometrist, Dr. Ray Gottlieb. He's retired, but he created a beautiful thing. We will put the link into the show notes. This is his presbyopia chart that he developed. You can print that for free on his website. It looks like this. It has all kinds of small print to very small print. And the exercise that you do is you have to cross your eyes, not on the page, but in front of a page. So what I usually tell my friends that are not able to do this, it's hard to demonstrate what you exactly will see. But basically, when you look at these two dots, you basically will make it three dots. And I will show you in a second how to do it. When you see three dots, there will be a fifth column of this text that looks like it's further, it's kind of a 3D image. It looks like it's a little further backwards. So the way to do it is initially you might need a finger or pencil or some focal point. I can just cross my eyes and see the three dots really easily, but you might want to have a focal point. So what you need to point your eyes somewhere between in front of this page. So having a little pencil that you look at, so you look at the pencil. At some point, you will see three dots. Initially, you might see four, but it's basically your two eyes working together to converge, which is a skill we need for near vision. And once you do that and you can hold it, you can get the three dots. Initially, they might kind of come in and come out and they're fleeting. But once you can hold them, you can then move your gaze, holding that kind of cross-eyed, I don't know if you can see it, holding that cross-eyed gaze as you look down. And all of a sudden, you might be able to read the smallest print without glasses. Once you master that, then you can start moving it around, maybe walking through the house, so you can make it more and more and more difficult. But doing this kind of presbyopia chart that Ray Gottlieb created, it's a beautiful way to train your convergence, and it's totally free on his website. He's an amazing resource, former behavioral optometrist. So print this out. I recommend that you don't do it on the computer, print it out. And if you don't have a printer, guys, you can also just use some small print that you have and just draw two circles on it. They don't have to be perfect. You can use a black Sharpie and just draw some circles. But practicing converging is a really important skill because that's what we need to see up close. All right. So that's exercise 2. First one was childhood near vision activities, something ideally black and white, like word puzzles, connect the dots, coloring. The second one is convergence exercises with the presbyopia chart or some other objects that you draw on a piece of paper, and then you try to make 3 out of 2. The third thing is really important. That's memory and imagination. So if you have presbyopia, you live in the past, you probably have a good memory. Now, the exercise that I like to do is very simple. It's the black dot exercise. Dr. Bates, the founder of Vision Improvement, kind of created this initially. And he often had people, instead of a black dot, use a black diamond O, which is a tiny 4-point size O. So the black dot, and see how I made mine really small? Mine is really small. So you can start with a bigger one. You can even use one that looks like this size. Doesn't matter. But what you do, you can draw it first if you want to have an actual image that you can see with your eyes. And then you close your eyes. And with your closed eyes, in your mind, you remember that black dot. And you remember it's super black. and the piece of paper is snow white, like really, really, really white. And as you remember this black dot, and then this is not about necessarily seeing it floating in front of your eyes. Some people see visual things really like, but you can maybe you just see it in your mind. That's not important, but you have a memory, you close your eyes and you quote unquote see the black dot in your mind. And then the point would be to make it even blacker, as if you use a fountain pen with black ink and you add another layer of it and you add another layer of it and you move your attention around the black dot. So the better your memory, the better your actual visual skills. So in your memory, the black dot will be very sharp. Maybe it's vibrating a little bit, maybe it's moving a little bit. And if you try to stare at it, like you really focus hard on it, it will probably disappear in your inner mind. Just like the real one, if you really stare at the real dot on a piece of paper and you stare really hard at it, eventually it might disappear. So the key is to be relaxed about it, as if you draw here's my little dot, and let me use the bigger one, you see it better. Let's imagine that's just one dot, and you're moving your attention around the dot, left to right, up and down, you're moving it around, you look in the center of your dot. So moving your attention around is very important because we cannot hold frozen attention on one spot. Even on a black dot, you still want to move your attention around inside the black dot versus just thinking of the black dot. All right, there's many memory and imagination skills you can use. We have a whole variety in my natural key vision program and in my 21-day program because we're using those skills for reading. Now, another thing that's important, number 4, is movement. We want to create more movement in our eyes. One way to do this is something that we call a shifter. This is a shifter that I printed out. It's in my courses. But again, you can draw your own. You can literally use a black Sharpie, make a shifter like this. You can just draw. They don't have to be straight. This is thinner ones. Doesn't matter. You can even draw lines like this next to your black dots. So that might help you. Let me do it right now. I'm having my black dot, and I don't have a really thin marker, but let's say I'm just drawing some black lines. So the smaller the lines, the smaller the thing, the harder it'll be, right? So you start, this is the first one, or the drawn one, something like this. And then eventually you can make it small like this. And what you do with the shifter, I'm going to hold it this way so you can see it, but obviously I would look at it in the way that I can see it. The point is, as if you are reading a book, you're literally moving your head from left to right along the shifter. Blinking, breathing. You can actually use later on in real life, you can use picket fences that your neighbors have. You're moving your attention left and right. You might initially do this, what we teach children when they're reading. We have them look at a finger. And again, obviously I would do it facing my way. But you can even look at the finger and glide along. Keep looking at the finger as you go from side to side. And what will happen, there will be an appearance. This is a visual illusion. Visual illusions are great for vision improvement. So the visual illusion will be that as my finger moves to the right, the lines seem to move to the left. If you don't get that sensation, there's probably a lot of staring involved, a lot of efforting in looking. So what you can do initially, just to get the idea, is while your finger moves to the right, you can move the shifter the other way. So you actually create this sensation of oppositional movement. But the goal would be that you can do it without the finger, that you can just look from one side to the other, and it seems like the lines are moving without you actually moving them. So that's the exercise, and then you do that with eyes closed. You can still move your head. You have a memory of the shifter. And for many people, you will have more of a sense of movement with eyes closed. So we want to stimulate this idea of movement later on as you're getting to, do I have an actual book here that I can show? Nope, but I have a brochure here. The point will later be that when you look at actual text, as you're moving your attention around text, there will be a sensation of the letters going the other way as your attention goes from one side to the other. This is belt level difficulty and vision improvement techniques, but start with a simple shifter, draw some lines on the paper, and notice that everything, as your head and your eyes are moving in one direction, it seems that the object goes the other way. All right. So that's technique 4, is movement, noticing movement. The shifter is just the most You can use it with piano keys. If you have a piano, great way to do it. You can use, like I said, picket fences. Those iron fences are great. That your neighbors have. Maybe go from left to right. Maybe you have a staircase going to an upper level floor that has these um, beams, wooden beams. Those are all because you can do shifting, not just side by side. You can do it vertical. You can do a diagonal. This is great to relax all the outer eye muscles around the eyes, the 6 muscles that we have. Okay, the last one is, again, I wouldn't call it an exercise, but it doesn't matter what you do. If you use guided meditations, if you meditate, if you use a Joe Dispenza meditation, they're all great. But connect to a powerful future vision for yourself. Who do you want to be? Doesn't matter your age. I just had somebody sign up for my certification program who's 77 years old. And I had people in my natural vision programs that are 90. And one of my friends told me at 99, he passed away a few years ago at 101. He had always had excellent eyesight, didn't need any readers ever, didn't need any glasses for distance vision. And he said, I want to improve my eyesight even further. Can I work with you? So it doesn't matter what our age, guys. You can always improve, but you have to be excited. You have to build a strong future vision for yourself. What is your purpose in the world? Especially here in the Western world where we live, usually older people are not regarded. They just, everybody tries to look younger. I live in Los Angeles. Everybody gets Botox, all that stuff. I don't want to ever do that. Do I say I love getting older? No. But what is the thing about us that is amazing? What purpose do we bring into the world? How can we be useful? How can we be helpful? Even if you're bedridden, you could still do something. So build that future self vision for yourself. Get out of the pity party. What is something that you can be excited about? That is so important on that emotional level. So again, this is not an exercise, but it requires commitment. I do meditations every single morning because just like the rest of the world, it's easy to get frustrated and sad and upset and all these things. But we are the guardians of our own health, and that includes our emotional state, how we see ourselves, and what we want to do in this world, right? So find a way to live in the present moment by connecting. It sounds kind of counterproductive, but you want to be, who do I want to show up? I love this Joe Dispenza meditation that I'm doing right now. I don't even know what the title is, but it's like, what are things, habits, or I can't remember the exact words, but what are things that you choose not to do today? Complaining, whining, the past was better, being angry. Find a list of things that you do not want to do and instead focus on the things that you want to do. Are we perfect? No. Do I get frustrated? Yes. But working on ourselves, being aware of those things, noticing when we fall into those states, when we use those words like should have, could have, would have, those are all words based on the past, on some guilt and regret. So I hope this was helpful. To quickly go back to the 5 things, near point exercises like word puzzles, coloring, connect the dots, something that you do at the near point, something that is fun for you. Maybe it's something that you used to do in maybe woodworking. Don't get hurt, you guys. I like, again, the black and white things because reading is one of the near vision tasks that we most often find frustrating with presbyopia. So doing some kind of games that require some black and white lines or letters or something, that's number 1. Number 2 is the convergence exercises, using the presbyopia chart, Ray Gottlieb's, or draw some circles on a piece of paper or in a book so that you have some print to clear up. It makes it really fun when you do it like this. The third one was imagine the black dot. You can also do other things, but a black dot is so easy. If you can't do that one, maybe do a white one on black. Sometimes people find that more helpful. But using your memory and imagination skills because they're actually connected to what we see in the world. Visual illusions are amazing. We have many visual illusions that we can use to improve our vision. The fourth one was movement. I suggested the swinging, the shifting using a striped shifter. I made one the other day in my teacher training. This one is a big one I made, and I made this one. It's very large. I made it with electrical tape that I put on some kind of cardboard. So the nice thing about this one is because I didn't get the movement, when I use my finger, you can feel the stripes because they're slightly raised. It's black electrical tape I stuck on a cardboard. You don't need a printer. Just make yourself a shifter, use a black Sharpie, whatever it is. Practice the movement. And I would recommend practicing it not just horizontally, which is what we use most as humans, but also vertically, diagonally. So always moving your head along, not just the eyes. And then the fifth exercise, if we want to call it that, is connecting with your future self, being excited about the future. What is the value that you can give to society? Maybe you volunteer, maybe you read to children, maybe whatever it is that brings you joy, that makes you feel excited about getting up in the morning. Maybe it's running a community garden, whatever, it doesn't matter. And what matters is that you love doing it and that you feel like you're being of a service to the world. Maybe you're in bed, you can't move, but you can still read stories. You can still record a podcast. You can do whatever you want because when we know what we want, we can figure out the how. The how is never the big thing. It's always the why and the what. That's it for today. Let me see if there's any questions on YouTube about presbyopia. I don't see any questions. So come back next week. We will have Dr. Rani Barnick on. She's a neuro-ophthalmologist, and she will talk about other so-called age-related eye diseases and what we can do from a ophthalmology, holistic functional medicine perspective. We will talk a little bit more about nutrition and those kind of things. So we will talk about floaters, presbyopia, cataracts, all these things, age-related macular degeneration, all the things that they tell us are basically unavoidable as we get older. All right, YouTube, subscribe. Make sure to subscribe because that's the only way you will know when I go live every Wednesday at noon Pacific. And you get valuable content every week. And we have tons of good recordings. So subscribe to this channel. It helps me to keep doing this. It helps me to provide free content every single week when you subscribe and share this